White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki defending Ron Klain's Twitter habits after the White House Chief of Staff claimed this week, well, he retweeted a tweet from Jason Furman that said inflation was a problem for the rich. Listen to this.
Why would Ron Klain tweet that, and would you agree that that's a little bit tone deaf?
Do you think 2 tweets means more? I'm just curious.
It's not the first time that Ron Klain's Twitter has drawn some sharp criticism. Is that something that the White House is addressing at all, given this pushback, this criticism?
Are we addressing the Chief of Staff's Twitter habits?
Yes.
It is not a top priority, I would tell you, at this point in time.
Joining me now, former White House Chief of Staff himself, Mick Mulvaney. Not under this administration. Mick, good to see you. But the retweet was, I mean, it said that it's a high-class problem, inflation. I kind of understand what Jason Furman was getting at. But Ron Klain has gotten in this weird habit of retweeting, not Jason, but some pretty odious people. And it does beg the question of, like, why would you do that? What is Ron Klain's motivation to just stay on Twitter all the time?
Well, good morning, Dagan. By the way, thanks for having me. The question I asked when I saw that come out yesterday is, where does he find the time? If you're doing the job of the Chief of Staff, you'd be hard-pressed to find the time to tweet during the day. Look, I saw the tweet, high-class problems. If he meant that it's a problem only for the rich, then he probably should be fired. Because that's just so tone-deaf, it's so limousine liberal, it may end up, and it still may end up costing Democrats votes in Virginia in a few weeks and again in the midterms. If instead he meant that this was a problem that was better than having high unemployment, then that's just misreading what unemployment is. Everybody knows that unemployment could go to zero if people just stopped looking for work. So it's bad on every single level, and just reaffirms why chiefs of staff should be running the White House and not tweeting during the day.
Well, you would assume that Ron Klain is one of the people in the room when all of these decisions are getting made. And if these problems persist, there are not going to be store shelves full of toys come Christmas. Inflation is spiking. That wages so far this year, since President Biden was inaugurated, wages adjusting for inflation have fallen 2%. So you would think if Ron Klain doesn't focus on his job and get off the twit sphere, then he might be shown the sidewalk, and soon. Yeah.
Your job as Chief of Staff is to make the president look good. It's really hard right now to do that with Joe Biden. The supply chain difficulties are real. They're not going to go away because he holds a press conference yesterday. Look, I'll give credit where credit is due. The agreement with the unions to go to 24/7 at Long Beach, the agreement with the private corporations to go to 24/7 as we get ready for Christmas, that's a good move. But there's just scratching the surface. Keep in mind, these supply chain problems are not the only thing that's leading to shortages and to inflation. There are structural difficulties coming out of Washington, D.C. It's harder for people to go to work because of the COVID rules. It's easier for people to stay home because of the labor rules. It's not just because the port isn't open enough hours during the day. So it was a move in the right direction yesterday for Joe Biden. But if he or Ron Klain thinks they've solved the problem, they're going to have a real difficult time the next couple of months. And the last thing they need is to be taking these sort of comments about rich people and misunderstanding the unemployment numbers. So again, not a really good day for Joe Biden or for my successor, Ron Klain. I bet they wish they had that went over across the board.
James Freeman, get in here.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just think we all remember Ronald Reagan, or some of us do, saying inflation is the thief of the middle class. This is a very regressive tax. And so it's not a rich person's problem, really. It's a problem for people who have to devote a lot of their income to things like food and housing and energy.
Follow up on that, Mick. I remember Jimmy Carter. I remember growing up in the 70s, and so I recall firsthand the hardship it put on my parents who were running a wholesale grocery business, individually and as a business.
It's real. And by the way, most people know that. I guess the only people who don't know that are Jason Furman and Ron Klain, if they were saying this is something that only hits the upper class. That's a detached sort of reality. It hits the middle classes, it hits lower classes, it especially hits the retirees and the elderly harder than other folks. In fact, it can be good for rich people if you already own a bunch of assets you own a bunch of property, you own a bunch of buildings, and those properties are now worth more. You actually could benefit under certain circumstances from inflation. So again, there's nothing good that comes out of this Twitter yesterday. Either he was wrong because he was talking about only rich people, or he's wrong because it's a good problem to have, which it's not. If he goes back and look, under Donald Trump, we had 3 or 4 million more people working that are working right now, yet we didn't have any inflation. So it's wrong at a bunch of different levels, and there could be repercussions both inside the White House and outside the White House in the elections in the weeks to come.
And Monica, under the Trump administration's policies, less regulation, lower taxes, you had the lowest poverty rate since records were kept in the 1950s, and you had the highest inflation-adjusted income or real income since 1967.
Yeah, we know what works, Dagan. Tax cuts, regulatory relief, fairer trade deals, and unleashing America's great energy sector. President Trump did all of those things and delivered a booming economy as a result, and it lifted all boats. So we saw historically low unemployment rates for every demographic in America: African Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, women, veterans, Americans with disabilities. And we also saw the poverty rate, particularly for African Americans, at historic lows. So we know what works, but the Democrats in office are not about policies that actually work and serve the American people. Those policies are about fundamentally transforming the U.S. economy.
Mick, I'm going to give you a final word. Where do we go from here as a country in terms of the supply chain crunch, inflation? What do you see in the months ahead?
Well, ultimately, it's going to be up to voters. I mean, elections have consequences, which is why this election in Virginia is so critical. I disagree with Freeman a little bit. I think Virginia can and will be a bellwether this year. Yes, it's a blue state. Yes, it's heavily Democratic in those Northern Virginia suburbs. But it was very close 4 years ago, or the last time I think that McAuliffe ran. And I think if the Republicans even come close in that race, it's going to send shivers through the Democrat Party nationwide. That election, the state legislative bodies up in New Jersey will be seen as a bellwether. People are going to understand that their votes make a difference. And if they like what they're seeing, they'll vote Democrat. If they don't, and they start to wonder themselves, maybe we were better off under President Trump, then I think you see an outcome that's in favor of the Republicans in the next couple of weeks. Youngkin,
his platform is really of the moment. He's going to get rid of the recent gas tax increase in the state. He's going to get rid of the recent grocery tax, repeal the grocery tax in the state. So it's about parents' power over their children and inflation. Before we go, Mick, what's your dog's name?
That's Hank, and I've done these television programs now for about 18 months, and he's never wandered in. But he came in to do a little commentary on Ron Klain's tweet, and even Hank thought it was a bad idea for the chief of staff to tweet. So
I just loved it. I didn't say anything when he wandered into the room, but he was clearly like, he just like opened the door with his head and came in. It looked like he was getting a toy maybe, and then trotted on back out. So God bless Hank.
At least he was quiet. Thanks very much. Thanks,
God bless Hank.